pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And it doesn't look like we had anyone wishing to address the board this evening. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes on June 5th, 2019?
So moved.
Second.
Question or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the approval of minutes of June 5th signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Disapprove, same sign. Motion carries. Now to the agenda. Do you have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And against, same sign. Seeing none, we have approved the agenda. And no conflicts of interest were raised for this time. Moving on to approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Disapprove, same sign. Seeing none, the motion carries. Yeah. Oh, we talked about this in our earlier meeting. Todd Tolke is missing from the board meeting. He is ill this evening, so we hope he recovers quickly. And we are welcoming new board member Nan Baker and re-elected board member Ryder. They were installed at the 4 o'clock meeting. So you notice some new faces and some missing faces, as Kent Alberti has retired from the board as well. And Dr. Griggs is in Pierre, I believe, at the State Tech Board meeting, correct, this evening. We are moving on to the reports of the president. The first one is the HRMC off-campus LPN approval. Thank you, Ben.
Good afternoon, President Mickelson, members of the board. My name is Dr. Benjamin Valdez. I'm the Vice President of Academic Affairs for Southeast Tech, and I'm here with Ms. Kristen Paseo, who is one of our Deans of Curriculum Instruction over our nursing program. We are here before the board today asking for the board to approve Southeast Tech to add the Huron Community Center as an additional location for Southeast Technical Institute. The Huron Community Center would allow us to go ahead and start offering academic programs there in Huron. One of the reasons that we do need board approval is that the center will have to be authorized by the Higher Learning Commission, and they are going to require approval from our authorizing authority to move forward with reviewing that facility as additional location. The additional location and the programs that we'll be offering there initially is going to be our LPN program, and it will be the entire program offered on ground. We were approached by Huron Regional Medical Center because of a very high demand need for LPNs there within Huron and the surrounding rural community. So they have asked Southeast Tech to take our LPN program out to Huron. Currently, we are offering our RN program out in Huron. That program has not required board approval or HLC approval because less than 50% of our program is being offered there. The RN program is a hybrid program with most of the courses being offered online. So only a handful of the courses are actually offered there on campus. With Huron Medical Center, the joint operations with Huron Medical Center, they will be working with them where the Huron Medical Foundation will be providing financial support to help support the faculty and renovations of the community center campus so that we can have a full functioning LPN and RN program there within the Huron Community Center. Questions?
I just think this is great that this is partnership, obviously worked with the RN program, and they've come back and want to expand the program, and hopefully maybe some of the LPNs will eventually end up in the RN program. And Huron is trying to grow their own. They've obviously were just recognized by the governor for their economic development that they've been doing in their community. So thank you for doing the extra work to make this work and reaching new students for our school.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think especially in those rural areas, the need for nursing is very great. And so many times that obstacle is just access in general. And so I feel like this is a really great step to take that barrier away and give access in a way that those people can maintain their homes or their apartments. You can get maybe second career types of people who want to make a change and can do that either nighttime or part-time or whatever it is. And so, yeah, I think it's a great way, it's a great growth for Southeast Tech, but it's also a great way to support that community and that area with a definite need that they have. So it's an exciting growth opportunity.
Do you know how many students approximately we can serve in the LPN program?
We'll take up to, well, the proposal is up to 24, but we anticipate it'll be around 16.
Okay.
We started 7 RN last year, and 6 are finishing next week. And we have 10 coming into RN in the fall.
Nice.
And they tell me they could have anywhere from 10 to 14 for LPN to start in January. So once the word gets out, we think it will be a steady flow, because they can't leave that area to go to school.
Just as a side note, the South Dakota Board of Nursing has already approved Southeast Tech to expand and offer that as a location. That was our first test to ensure that governing body would ensure that we could go. So we did get their approval back in February.
And then is the Higher Learning Commission the last step, or there's a step after that?
No, that is the last step.
Okay.
Once we have these approvals in place, we'll be submitting our application. It is a stepped process. The first part is submitting the application. Once the application is submit, HLC allows us to immediately start operations. They'll review our application, and they will schedule a site visit. The site visit will probably be next fall, so about a year from now. And they'll be sending out a visiting team of 1 to 2 individuals to visit the facility and ensure that it does meet all of the requirements of an institution of higher learning.
And the RN program is accredited through ASIN. The LPN is not accredited through ASIN yet, but the RN is, so we had to submit a substantive change to ASIN, and they conducted a visit last fall, and we got approval for our substantive change for the RN program. So lots of visitors, lots of accreditation hoops.
Checks and balances.
Yeah, so I know sometimes that is a concern for people as far as graduating from an accredited
Yes.
program. How long would it take for like an accreditation of the LPN program?
Well, it took 3 years for the RN,
Okay.
but that was our first time through it. So the
Sure.
LPN, we anticipated would probably take about 2 years.
Okay.
And so we look to do that, probably the whole LPN program, probably start on that next year. So,
Any other questions? Do you have a motion on the HRMC off-campus LPN approval?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion?
Great job. Exciting.
Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, we have Rich to talk about our budget.
President Mickelson, member of the board, I come bearing good news. First, I'll be brief. Secondly, kind of going back to the tentative adoption back in May, going to the bottom line, so to speak, if you recall, that budget was calling for utilization of existing cash reserves of roughly $965,000 in post-secondary fund. Through some changes we've made, some opportunities, some doors closing, window opens, I guess, so to speak, we're able to reduce that request by about $80,000. So that's kind of the bottom line as we look at the post-secondary fund. Kind of back up for Board Member Baker, just kind of bring you up to speed. The FY20 proposed budget, as I stated, was using some existing reserves, and a lot of that came about as a result of what we all kind of characterized as one-time events, extraordinary types of things that weren't necessarily planned for. So they were tied to three things. One was an early retirement benefit that we will be eliminating in FY20. It's a change in the way that those expenditures related to that early retirement are recorded. It used to be spread out over 5 years. It's now incurred in the year in which the individual retires in a lump sum. So that put at a pretty significant exposure there that we've programmed in our budget. As I indicated to the board members, it's not the highest, it's not the lowest, it's somewhere in between. So we'll kind of see towards the end of next year what people choose to elect that incentive and whether that estimate's correct or not. And we'll kind of wait until we get to February and see where we're at. We had a couple of projects which you may be keenly aware of that created some changes in timelines, more or less. The fact of the Jefferson High School coming in behind our property back there required the extension of Terry Avenue. As the adjacent property owner, which you are, but the post-secondary fund being the adjacent property owner, we had to share in the cost of the extension of that street. So that was not on our radar anywhere, so to speak. We had some funds out in future years for street improvements. So we're just kind of shifting these projects, pulling that forward. So we are going to adjust our capital program, bring those into this year, but we can't fund it with existing revenues. We had other things in the works. Second thing was a reconstruction of the new Tech High parking lot on our campus. We're doing that in sections. That's coming due for replacement a couple years earlier than what we had planned. So we were pulling that into kind of these extraordinary items, those kind of three things together. When you add that all up, those three projects, it's about $1.5 million or so, maybe 1.6 million. If we were going to entirely fund all of that through our reserves, that's the request for cash we would be asking for. But we also recognized in FY19 that our revenue projections, we're not going to meet them, or that's still being worked on, but credits were down a little bit less than anticipated. So rather than walking out of FY19 with this structural or actual deficit that we're kind of projecting at this point at right around $750,000, we want to try to cover that in our next operating budget, say, all right, we're going to make it up going forward. So that's why you're seeing kind of that differential between that 1.6 of what those three one-time projects are versus the cash that we're requesting of about 880. So we're trying to cover that anticipated loss for this year by not diving deeper into our reserves as part of our FY20 operating budget. Kind of another important characteristic in our tentative adoption of the FY20 budget was the way we approached salary package this year. We're not under negotiated agreements with any of our staff, so it really is about where do we stand fiscally and what can we do. So we have not programmed in an automatic increase. It's really based on achieving revenue estimates and revenue targets. The other side of that is making sure we stay within the bounds of our expenditure appropriation, which I'm going to ask you to approve here in a few minutes. If we don't achieve our revenue objectives, those salary adjustments will not go forward. So that's a built-in savings, so to speak, in our budget. So those are a couple things that we're trying to do to address that that will hopefully have a positive impact as we move into FY20. So now as we get in and we look at the specifics of the post-secondary fund, there were some adjustments made to revenue. The adjustments overall are fairly minor, really centering around some foundation support, both from the Southeast Tech Foundation. We had requested some additional support that the foundation was not willing to provide or was unable to provide or didn't feel comfortable, whatever that dialogue and discussion was, but they capped the administrative support of our programs at $150,000 for the operation of the foundation itself. So They did not fund a position that we were asking them to pay half the cost of the salary and benefits. So as part of that funding, we reduced our anticipated revenue from the foundation, but there was also an offsetting expenditure since the foundation wasn't going to fund it. We didn't feel we could go on our own for 100% of it. So that position, that's that door closing, but it opened up an opportunity to do some things within this budget that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. Another foundation support was related to the Huron Regional support of the LPN-RN program. It's two people separated by a common language of what that support actually was, so we needed to make that adjustment to reflect what that reality is going to be. So we reduced that by $30,000. We offset that in the adjunct as well, so we'll be able to absorb that. We had some additional revenue come in through Perkins as well. The final allocation increased. That's a federal grant that comes in, so you'll see some different adjustments on the expenditure side of things as well. And then there was some additional miscellaneous revenue from Housing Foundation based on what the anticipated cost of that program is. So that's 100% reimbursement as it relates to that. When you get down into the expenditures, the thing that we elected to do or tried to do, since we weren't going to have a salary package, and we've done this over the last couple of years, and it's created some problems internally, some morale issues, I guess is a simple way to say that, is by not granting lane increases for faculty that invested in their educational attainment. It had a punitive effect to it. Same thing on the staffing side by not allowing advancement in there. We may have had people that you reach a certain point where you have the same skill set, but they weren't able to advance on the salary schedule because we had frozen steps as well. So by some of those adjustments on the expenditure side of things, President Griggs wanted to see if we could find the money to at least grant the lane changes and those step increases. It's not a huge dollar amount overall. In aggregate, it's about $70,000. But it's a way so that folks don't fall behind, at least in those aspects of it, that we're recognizing and acknowledge that investment in educational attainment for the faculty. So the revisions to the tentative adopted reflect that desire and that intent to provide those lane and step increases. There's a few other minor adjustments, just some reclassifications. An example, I had an item, a project that was classified in software. Districts doing the same thing, they classified in building improvements, so we just moved it out of there. So the majority of the adjustments are related to dollars from the elimination of that community relations department, and those ancillary expenditures were spread across into the salary for the steps and lane increases, some adjustments in the Perkins, some additional money to that, and then some movement around. We had put a placeholder in for a rather significant portion of equipment. Dr. Valdez and the academic group we're going to fund the medical assistant position in there that's eligible for Perkins. As we bring on the dental and the veterinary positions, we need staff before we actually start delivering services to students. That's eligible for Perkins funding. It makes sense to fund that with it. We're not leaving our equipment short in our needs, filling those needs and what's required in this FY20. So it's a way to move pieces around on the board to kind of best address what our needs are. So that's kind of the highlights of it. In the enterprise funds, in the bookstore, the child care and the food service fund, just some minor tweaks and adjustments related to those lanes and steps. They'll just have to absorb that in there either through increases of revenue or an existing use of cash. You see that in the bookstore. We're using a little more cash, but they're setting in a cash healthy position. At $1,300 isn't that big of a deal, so we're going to utilize that. The other two programs are going to make some adjustments in revenue estimates to cover it. So that's the very quick and easy on that. If there's specific questions, I'm do my best to answer.
Any questions before we move to motion? Thank you, Rich. And I know we keep saying this, but I think you guys are really positioning yourself, and maybe not this fall, but the next fall with the vet tech and medical assisting and dental assisting and all those programs coming to fruition for success. And hopefully then everyone will get salary increases at STI.
Well, yeah, and that's very true, and it really is taking on more of that. We have to recognize we have a little bit more of a business model, and that we have to be achieving revenue targets and revenue objectives. Otherwise, you just continue to cut yourself to death to try to handle these things. And I think you're exactly right on those programs, that they will start to generate excitement. Just the fact that I think they parked a couple ag pieces over on the interstate side of it, that generated a few inquiries. So I offered to tie my horse up out there. And, nobody wanted to take me up on that offer. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think we're trying to position for the future. A lot of effort on the marketing side that this budget reflects. We've talked about that before, in tracking what our efforts are and what they're doing and what they're accomplishing, going out and getting students. But at the end of the day, you still got to have the programs, because that's what's going to bring them in. So.
Okay, do I have a motion for the final adoption of the fiscal 20 budget for STI?
So moved. Second.
Do we have to open this one up for a hearing to public input right here at this point of the meeting?
We had that. That would have been what?
But we don't have to at this part as well?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
It's an adoption based on the motion, because the public hearing would have been at the tentative adoption. So these
Thank
are
you.
the adjustments for it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, or any further discussion on the motion?
Oh, I was just going to add, just like anybody who creates a personal budget for themselves, we all have unexpected things that come up, whether it's an air conditioner that goes out or, whatever it might be, a car issue. And so the things we had to kind of move up and draw from, they're value added. They're just at a different time and needed. And so you have to make those adjustments. And so I think it's smart to go into next year kind of knowing we covered as much of it as we could, and we can launch those new programs and have that excitement, knowing we're hopefully at that kind of break-even point and a fresh start. And
Right. And I think in September, once we get through that census date, we'll have a better sense. I'll probably bring that in with at our October meeting.
Sure.
We'll talk a bit about where we end up FY19. So we'll see if my prediction of the $770,000 loss is on target.
Sure.
If it comes in less than that, that's great. That puts us in a better position going forward. If it's worse than that, we'll have to
make
have some
some
discussions
adjustments
about how we address that, keeping in mind that we want to limit our exposure in FY20 to what we're asking you for today.
yeah,
So.
yeah, well, sounds good.
Thank you. Thanks. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the final adoption of the FY20 budget signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. We're moving on to second reading of the Southeast Tech Policy Regulations. Board Member Parker is going to address these.
Sure. So there were 3 policies that were up for second reading. And I'll just, GBEA, nepotism policy, KLC and its accompanying regulation, relations with social service agencies investigating child abuse, and IB and its accompanying regulation, STI academic freedom. The nepotism policy was updated to reflect significant rewarding and removing outdated language. The social service agencies investigating child abuse was updated to reflect a separation of social services and law enforcement investigation processes. And last but not least, IB, academic freedom, was drafted to provide guidance for the campus community to promote excellence in teaching and learning and preserve freedom of expression. So the 3 policies had been out, posted for public review, and no concerns were raised. So I move to approve the 3 policies.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Seeing none, All those in favor of adopting new policies GBEA, STI, KLC, STI, and KLCR, STI, and IB, STI, IBR, STI, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any other business to come before us? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.